This is huge news, guys. We are getting Vixera for free as part of a shard summoning event, and she is going to be one of the strongest epics in the game, one of the strongest epic lords, and most importantly, completely game-changing for many accounts. If you pick up any of the new amazing DPS from the Poison meta team that is coming into Watch of Realms, but you're not lucky enough to get Nastya, Vixera is amazing. Yes, correct. She is not as good as Nastya, but she herself does a good amount of damage. And because now she will be the only other unit in the game besides Nastya that applies the debuff Acute Poisoning, she is amazing at ramping up the damage for Numera and Vorn, as well as yourself. But you're going to see, like, the damage she puts out, and really she enables Numera and Vorn to put out, is so tremendous, you will run her over certain legendary lord comps. It really depends on your team, but for a lot of players, because you're getting her for free, if you can pick up Numera and or Vorn, but you're not lucky enough to get Nastya, you're still probably going to want to run this. Like, it is crazy. Very quick, guys. This video was so fun to make, but it took me so long. This was a labor of love kind of video. If you do appreciate it, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. So I'm going to do a lot of testing, a lot of showcasing to get you guys on the same page about this. We have the Fastidious test server up right now. I mean, you can see right out of the gate, this is a Hex and a maxed out exclusive, and he's running with Luneria. Then we've got Numera here running with Nastya. She's blowing him out of the water. I have 4 different tests prepared over here. This will be a lot of fun. Don't worry, I won't make you guys watch the whole run. The first test, I'll show you the setup, and then we're just going to run all of it on auto so you can really see as good a damage comparison as possible. But let me tell you, this is remarkable. I know she's just an epic, but Vixera is someone people should be supremely excited to pull because, let's face it, the vast majority of us will not get Nastya, and she is really good still. Yes, she's not as good as the crazy ancient exclusive lord, but she's pretty dang insane. So without further ado, we got to talk about Vixera. We got to do a ton of damage testing, and we got to get into it. Let's go.
Fastidious.
Fastidious.
So as you can see here, this shard summoning event, which if you don't know, it's like a fragment fusion for other games. You collect shards of a specific hero. When it's an epic hero, it's just 75 shards. Once you have 75, you can fuse a copy. You can create a copy, forge a copy, whatever you want to say. And they're really easy. These shard summoning events are very, very easy. It was also announced on the official Discord. You can see they shared a calendar here. There are tons of shards up for grabs. You only need 75 to create Vixera. And if we look, there are 80 available through the events, and there are 60 available through the Oracle trials. And that's not saying you're winning first or second or third place in the Oracle trial. That's just the completion rewards on the bottom. So if you're coming from a game like Raid Shadow Legends or something where the fusions can be really impossible, this is the opposite. If you're playing daily without even trying, you will get Vixera. She's 100% for free. The shard summoning event will be really easy. Let's quickly go over her kit, and then I want to get straight into the testing. We should all be excited. I'm excited because I realize I'm probably not going to get Nastya, but I'm going to make sure I get Numera, or I'm going to hope I get Numera and Vorn, right? And Vixera makes the whole thing happen. Like, it is that important to pick her up, and now we're all guaranteed a copy. So here is, we'll rerun this because I want to show you the setup, but this was a run of Epic Lords only, so it's the first test I'm going to show off with Numera paired with Vixera. I make that distinction because we're going to do a second run where we pair Numera with Luneria, and I guess I'll just break down the next 2 runs with you as well. Then we'll do Legendary Lords where we're just using Aracha, so we're running Vorn and Numera in a Piercer comp. And then finally, we're not going to deploy Nastya. I think we all get it. She's nuts. I'm going to make a few videos about it this week, but we will use her as the Lord, and we will run Numera and Vixera under Nastya, as well as Vorn, I should say. I just couldn't fit it all in here. But yeah, if you didn't know, Numera and Vorn are both dual faction Esotericist Piercer, so we've got a lot of really, really cool tests we can do. So let's frickin' do them. You can see here, crazy performance, right? On all these tests, all of our legendaries will be A0. All of our epics will be A5. I think that's just really natural. One exception will be Diao Chan at A1, just for the bigger range, so we can have really consistent, easy testing. But you'll see, like, this is an A0 Hex and A0 Silas. Both Hex and Silas are in maxed out exclusives. So a plus 25 Suture Acapris for Hex and a plus 25 Eye of Penitence for Silas. I also threw in Falcia here because I thought people would want to see how good she is after the buff. The answer, Very good. Lots of Falcia content coming, I hope, over the next 2 weeks. As soon as I find a window to make it, I will. Falcia is kind of crazy now. But you'll see Vorn just doing an exceptional job. 23 million more than Silas. This is Silas in a maxed out exclusive. And then we've got next up, second best Hex, but Hex in a max Sutra, and still 18 million damage more Numera, and that's with Vixera. I also want to say Vixera is only 7 million damage less than Silas. I know we're running Silas with Luneria. That's a lot worse than a Iovar or an Aracha. Obviously, we'll do our Aracha test here shortly, but this is pretty dang impressive. She joins Elysia as the best boss damage epic in the game, at least of the Lords for sure. And she can do a lot of stuff by herself, because she's putting out acute poisoning to buff herself. But a really good result. Bonded Silas, only 7.5 million more damage. So let's get into the testing. We have to just so quickly go over her kit. I don't want to do a big kit breakdown. I will have a full Vixera guide later in the week. Do not worry about that. Sometime by the weekend, we'll have a full Vixera guide, but you have to just understand the gist of what makes her special. She's got a couple key unique things in her kit. She puts out a ton of poison. Her basic attacks put out poison, and getting hit guarantees she reflects a poison. So in boss single target content, she maintains a full 10 poison stacks in her column the entire time. Very key thing here, her basic, if you can just get her Awaken 1, so 1 Epic Soulstone or 1 dupe, it'll be really easy. This comes with acute poisoning. This is increasing the damage of all poison and all toxic surge. That's the poison explosion that Numera does. All of that is increased, like post-calculation, by 40%. So it's a 1.4x multiplier. This takes poisoning to the next level. The final thing you got to know about her, this is slightly selfish, but it is really strong. Every time she places a poison on the target, she is increasing her magic resistance penetration, so her ignore magic defense, by 1%. It takes no time at all for her to get 30 poison stacks out there. Obviously, it caps out at 10 stacks, but she keeps re-upping the stacks. That counts as placing a poison. So she's just going to shred 30% of the poison defense. It really is quite a cool kit. To understand the parameters for the test, we are not doing any Laurel cycling, no Volca to reduce cooldowns. We're putting our units out. Hollow will heal and provide rage. Diao Chan will provide inspiration, and then obviously the damage boost and the penetration to the top highest attack units. You'll see who those are in just a second. But basically, I tried to run all our units in as comparable gear as we possibly could. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've got our 6 DPS. All of them are crit capped with 2 attack bonus main stats and 1 crit damage main stat on the right. All of them are in the appropriate tier 2 DPS set. So Soulbound Arcana for our Soulbound Arcana heroes, and Infernal Roar for our Infernal Roar heroes. And then on the left side, they're always in Warlord. I tried to get the stats very consistent in terms of attack speed and crit damage as well. I'll click through all our units now so you can see, but I really tried to get them all in that 330% to 340% range. I tried to get that attack speed around 330 to 350. So you'll see, I tried to get it really consistent. Here's Silas at the most crit damage, 343, but 324 attack speed. It's all pretty dang consistent. So there you have it. We went through it all. Finally, Vixera. It looks like she's not crit cap, but she does get at A4 8% crit. And there she is, 338% crit damage. And then she's got 349 attack speed. It's all very, very even. For artifacts, if there's an exclusive available, the hero in question is wearing it, and it's all maxed out. So a maxed out Sutra for Hex, a maxed out Eye of Penitence for Silas, a maxed out Lucent Flame for Falcia, and a maxed out Phoenix Feather Fan for Diao Chan. Everyone else is just in their best in slot plus 25 normal artifacts because they don't have an exclusive. So it's going to be Spirit Siphon for Vorn. That is going to be a Shattered Hilt for Numera. And then, I guess it's just Vixera's in a maxed out tier Twilight. And then Hollow, we've got in the Golden Scarab. So without further ado, I think you kind of get it. Our 6 legendaries are A0, and then our 2 epics are A5. Let me also show you both Diao Chan and Hollow, as you can see, are in broken set on the right. That is to make sure we don't have some strange situation where some heroes are getting Invigoration and some are not. So no one's getting it. I think that's the cleanest way to do it. You'll see this comp does really well even without that. We got to move Vorn over here for this test to the Esotericist team. And let me actually just talk you through the 4 tests a final time. I already will, for the remainder of the video, move myself to the corner just so I'm out of the way of everything. But this first test is using just Epic Lords. We are running Numera and Vorn with Vixera. The next test, we're going to run Numera and Vorn with Luneria, so still Epic Lords, but running them as the Piercers. They're both dual faction, Esotericist and Piercer. Vixera will be a Lord just for herself and Falcia. Then we're running just Legendary Lords, but just Aracha. So we're going to run that full Piercer comp like this with Vixera on the side with Falcia. Everyone else with Aracha. Key thing, we're not going to deploy Vixera. We're going to deploy Aracha because it's going to be a pretty amazing difference in how much more damage Vixera can do than Aracha. And then finally, we will do a Legendary Lord comparison where we're running our Poisoners, Vixera, Numera, and Vorn with the God tier Legendary Lord Nastya, and we're running Silas and Hex with Aracha. That should provide a pretty nice comparison of the damage Vorn and Numera can do with Aracha as opposed to Nastya. And then I also want to point out we will be able to see what kind of damage Numera and Vorn can do with Vixera as compared to what kind of damage Silas and Hex can do with Aracha, because I think that really might surprise you guys as well. Vixera is freaking awesome. So let's do the testing. I'll fast forward all these runs super fast. Let's just focus on the setup of this first run, because the setup of all subsequent runs will be the same, and then we'll just do damage check-ins at the end as I update my spreadsheet. All right, baby, let's go. Let's start this thing off. Remember, the order placement doesn't really matter because no one's wearing Invig. One thing to consider, Diao Chan will put the buff that she does, the damage boosting buff from her passive, once we switch her to black mode, on the two allies with the highest attack in range that aren't healers. So nothing we can do about it. That is going to be Numera and Falcia. So a little boost to Numera. I tried getting this to work so it lands on Hex. I had no luck, so just take that into consideration. But yeah, we can kind of just go down the line and start placing everyone. Let's go Hex here. Let's go Vixera can go right there. Let's go Numera here. Falcia here. Hollow can go there. Let's do Silas and Vorn. Finally, we'll place Diao Chan. You can see with A1 she's covering everyone. Now let's switch her onto black mode, and she'll go and she'll place those buffs. As soon as she switches to black mode, we're going to click this on auto, and you'll see as these update, we can already click it on auto. Let's wait, and we should be seeing those buffs appearing here, right? So there's the penetration, the ignore defense and magic res, and there's the damage increase. That's going to be a result of what is getting applied by Diao Chan. All right, that's basically it. We let this run on auto. We'll check back in at the end. I'll turn on these overall statistics above my head. These are cool to keep an eye on because they include damage dealt to the shield. That is a touch of RNG that will be in this fight, but not enough that it's going to mess up our results. I'm going to fast forward super, super fast, and I'll see you at the end. All right, guys, we just took down the final shield. You can see DPS is not an issue for this comp at all. 3 quick things I want to talk about while the fight's still running. You might be seeing we have 3 poisoners, Vixera, Numera, and Vorn, but we're getting 4 stacks of poison. That's a function of Vorn's kit. That's really cool. Every unit can get 10 stacks of poison on like their own stack, their own pile, their own column, except for Vorn. He can build 2 stacks at once. So that's very interesting, or 2 columns, 2 stack of stacks, whatever you want to think of it as. So that's what's going on there. You also might see we do a really good job getting up to 10 stacks of poison for each pile, each column, and then it goes away. That is a function of Numera doing her toxic surge, essentially like activating all the poison, exploding it. And then finally, you might have noticed Vorn was doing more damage in this run, I'll show you right now, than he did in the last run. And that's just a function of me moving him over to the Esotericist team. That first run you saw at the beginning was me testing him with Luneria. It's not such a huge difference, but it certainly is something. The key thing to focus in on, obviously, is Numera's crazy, right? Completely crazy. So this is with an Epic Lord. She's putting up 121 million, almost 122 million at A0. I mean, no exclusive. She's going up against Hex A0, maxed out Suture Copperis exclusive artifact. Yes, his Lord isn't so great, but you'll see with Aracha too. I mean, this is a really high amount of damage. Then you can see Vorn and Falcia very close. Pretty big drop to Bound Silas, however you want to say it. And actually very close behind is Vixera. So it kind of looks like Silas and Vixera aren't good. No, these 4 guys are just awesome, especially Hex and Numera, but this top 4 is crazy. Bound Silas is still really, really nice, and Vixera's kind of right behind him. So she is just completely elite for an epic DPS. Give me one moment to update my sheet. All right, guys, here you have it. Here is my sheet. You'll see in all these columns, I'm always writing in millions of damage dealt, and then within those millions, I'm rounding to the nearest 10th. So you can see Numera coming in with like over 27, nearly 27 million more damage than Hex. Actually, 27.1 million. So over 25% more damage. I hope you realize how insane that is. This is a Hex and a max out exclusive. Everyone should go for Numera now that we all know we're getting Vixera. You got Vorn here, pretty close to Hex, Falcia right behind, a drop down to Silas, and then nearly 56 million for Vixera. The next test now, we're just going to be using all of our other heroes with Luneria, because of course I mentioned Numera and Vorn have dual faction in Esotericist and in Piercer. So not too much will change here, except they won't be able to ult as often. A key thing though, I'm not going to use Vixera because I want to take the acute poisoning out of the equation so you can see how big of a difference that is actually making. So quite simply, what we're going to do for the run, let's move along. We're going to move Numera and Vorn to the Piercer comp with Luneria, but then I'm just not going to deploy Vixera just to keep that going. So you can see these guys have their dual faction. Let's swap them over. So now we've got 4 Piercer DPS. I'm going to do everything else exactly the same. So trust me, the setup will be identical. I'll see you at the end of the run, but we are not going to deploy Vixera, right? Her role here is she's just a Lord to Falcia for consistency's sake, and then we're not using her. So the total blood will go down, but the key thing, I just want to see how the damage is affected for Numera and Vorn when they don't get the acute poisoning. So I'm going to head in. I'll see you at the end of the run. All right, folks, end of the run here and some big takeaways. Number one, I would say Numera is still freaking amazing, even without the help of a Poison Lord. Clearly, Vixera makes an enormous difference, and you'll see the difference Nastya makes is a whole nother level, but she's still hanging with Hex. You know, they both have a little bit of RNG in their kit, but basically she's within striking distance of the damage he's able to make. She's actually trying to pass him right now as we finish off this run. I mean, they're just within a couple million. Then it's a pretty clear drop to Falcia, and then Vorn is noticeably worse than Falcia, like compared to before, without Vixera, without the acute poisoning. So that acute poisoning, that 40% more damage is so useful to the poisoners. And I'm just going to say, Nastya at A3, her acute poisoning goes up to 70%. Can you see how meta and mind-blowing that will be? All the top players are going to have an A3 Nastya for so much content. We still just barely got our 50K. Let's look at the damage now. Numera actually just passed Hex in the end. A key thing to note, Hex had more total damage. That was tracking the damage into the shield. But I mean, that kind of tells a big story. No exclusive artifact, no Poison Lord, and Numera is like as good as Hex. I know this isn't a Numera guide, but that's kind of crazy. Then you'll see Silas in the same spot. Vorn pretty significantly worse, just like Numera was without Vixera. Let me load this into my sheet, then you can see the numbers side by side. All right, folks, I updated it. You can see it here. So Numera dropped, what is that, 17.2 million. Hex actually with RNG went up, so they kind of met in the middle. But you can see if Hex had RNG like the first time, Numera's just even better. There also is the what's going into the shield, what isn't, but I think we're starting to get a clear picture. We got Vorn here dropping just about exactly 14 million damage. That's kind of a lot. That's 1.4k blood. Then we got Falcia, pretty consistent, a little bit worse RNG. Silas, very consistent, only 0.3 million off. But you can see we've got a clear hierarchy, and Numera's awesome, but it's another level with Vixera. Let's now do the same exact kind of experiment, but just taking out Luneria and putting in Aracha. And one thing I want to do here is we're actually going to deploy Aracha because we can get a comparison of what's Aracha's DPS like compared to Vixera. Spoiler alert, worse. She's worse. You would think she's better because she is a Legendary Lord, but it is definitely worse. So let's put her in. We can do a very quick swap. I'll keep going live here in the video just so you can see it for yourself. We can put just Vixera's gear right onto her. So there you go. Unfortunately, she's not crit capped because Vixera was benefiting from her crit boost. But over a long fight, 92%, it should normalize pretty nicely. That'll basically do it. We're obviously going to see a pretty major jump here. Once again, I'm not going to deploy Vixera. You'll get to see things in action with the acute poisoning once we put Nastya in the next comp. And I'm really excited for you guys to see how well Vixera can perform with Nastya as her lord. So let's say you want to go full poison, you can still fit in Vixera if you don't have the other 2 poisoners, or you want to run 3 poisoners on top of Nastya. So I'm going to set this up, head into battle, see you at the end. All right, guys, fight is winding down here. Similar story, just all the piercers are scaled higher. Obviously, with the Pure Soul Lord now, Vorn has passed Falcia since Falcia only has Vixera. But Numera and Hex neck and neck again, and even including damage into the shield, Numera is actually passing him in a pretty crazy way. So Hex didn't get as good RNG, and now he's going to fall short, probably even shorter when we see what damage went into the shield versus didn't. And then I'll just show you Aracha not exactly performing. So there you have it. That's just the Pierce Lord and then Vixera for Falcia. A really cool, fun thing we can do is when we do the next run, we're going to take out Falcia and still run Aracha, because Aracha, as you might have seen, is providing a lot of poisons. So that synergizes well even with Numera on the other team. So that could be a pretty neat thing. Let's get those stats now. You can see neck and neck, but this time Numera again is on top, even including the damage into the shield. With Aracha, obviously now he has a Legendary Lord. Vorn passes Falcia, but here's kind of a crazy thing, right? Even with Aracha, bound Silas at A0 can't keep up with Falcia. Like, Falcia is kind of a new level now. It's pretty amazing. And then Aracha is paltry. So let me put that into the sheet. You'll see all the numbers side by side. Okay, guys, here you go. Some pretty major takeaways. First thing catching my eye, right? If we look, Numera with the Legendary Lord, unless it's Nastya, is like performing to the level of her with Vixera. That is how good an epic Lord Vixera is for her poisoners. So for Vorn and for Numera. You can actually see here, Vorn did better only by 2.4 million with Aracha compared to Vixera. I mean, that to me, that is remarkable. Numera still beats Hex here. Silas has a big jump up like 16 million, 15.5 million when he gets Aracha. Still worse than Falcia with an Epic Lord. And then Aracha is 60% as strong, basically, as Vixera. So when it comes to a deployable Lord for DPS, Vixera is better than this Legendary Lord. The final tests now, the big crazy test. We're not going to deploy Nastya. You guys are going to have to wait for that. But she's crazy. Let's take Nastya. Let's put her in there. And actually what we're going to do is we're just going to take out Falcia. Because we don't need to run Falcia now. Don't worry, I've got a lot of Falcia content coming. But we can just find any A0 Nastya if I can locate her. What the heck? Oh, she's going to be all the way back here. Is that why? Yes, she is. All right, there goes Nastya. So now we got Nastya with Vixera, who will be deployable, but not a Lord. Vorn will rejoin the team. Numera will rejoin the team. And we're going to see. So we got an interesting synergy here where Aracha obviously is the Lord of Silas and Hex, but she's providing poisons for this comp and a lot of things to explode for Numera. Should be really cool. We do have one issue with Aracha wearing Numera's gear. So let's put that gear back on Numera, and I will try to build as comparable of like the same kind of Soulbound Arcana set Aracha as here for Aracha. Just give me one moment. All right, all set. I realized after I finished this, I could have just moved Falcia's gear onto Aracha since she was also in Soulbound Arcana. But you can see it's the same kind of story. We're coming in at 337% crit damage, so right in that similar range, 335 to 345, right about 350 attack speed like everyone else. Give me one moment. Okay, ascended that wisdom into Soulbound Arcana. And yeah, we went the 2 attack bonus, then a crit damage, but 2 main stat attack bonus, 1 crit damage. It's the same story. Let's hop into battle. This is the one I'm most excited about. I'm assuming a lot of you guys, I kind of know what's going to happen. Maybe you guys have some guesses, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Let me set it up. I'll see you at the end of the battle. All right, guys, home stretch here, and we're seeing some crazy numbers. Numera running away with it. But here's a fun thing. Vorn is basically neck and neck with Hex. Hex actually only just passed him, and here comes Vorn now. So kind of a crazy little thing that happens. I think there's a pretty fair argument, especially if he ever gets an exclusive. Vorn with Nastya is better than Hex, at least at A0. At least he's comparable. I mean, look at those numbers. Numera's crazy. A0. I hope you guys have watched enough videos, or at least you can take my word for it. Go watch some other creators, Prospector, War Guides, whatever. 170 million, full auto, no cycling at A0 in any situation is a stupid amount of damage. Like what Numera just did is like blows A0 Wukong out of the water, who would probably do about 120. So you're looking here at 166.1 million, not counting shield damage at A0 full auto, no cycling. I mean, that's a new level we've never seen before. So Numera is amazing like that. But this is what I wanted to show you also. Vixera, if you're running her with Nastya just as a unit, It's a lot of DPS. That is better than Silas with Aracha by 8.3 million damage. You can see Vorn and Hex neck and neck, but I mean, we're talking 33% more damage nearly for Numera than Hex and Vorn, and they're all kind of equalized. So Nastya obviously takes it to a new level, but let me load into the sheet so you can see it side by side. The numbers are still pretty crazy. Otherwise, I have to say one more thing before I load it in. I'm realizing as I'm filming this, people are going to be like, what about with Iovar? I'll do a quick Iovar run after this. Let me load this in the sheet. All right, guys, on to the sheet. And you can see these numbers are pretty remarkable. Here's a big takeaway. Hex with Aracha is performing the same as Numera with Vixera. I know I kind of said that before, but I want to make that clear as day. Aracha still completely sucks, so major takeaway. I think she needs a buff in terms of damage, or she needs a lot more tankiness or crowd control in her kit. Vixera superstar, putting up 8.2 million once we rounded it off. More damage than Silas. Vorn and Hex neck and neck, pretty dang close. Let's do one final run. We're going to do Iovar instead of Aracha. Very simple because Iovar is a Soulbound Arcana hero. By the way, if you care, Aracha can wear Infernal Roar or Soulbound Arcana, but Iovar, clearly a Soulbound Arcana hero. Let's just swap it over to him. Let me just find my A0 Iovar. There he is. Let's switch with Aracha. Let's swap the gear. I'm going to keep this all going in one shot so you know it's legitness. Where's my Aracha? All right, we got a sort for her because of course we do. Can never make it easy for me. I should have favorited her. But yeah, there we go. For Iovar, we'll do a max exclusive, so he's at his max potential, just so we have that great comparison. And yeah, our final run. Guys, it's been a long one. Let's go. All right, guys, home stretch here. First initial takeaways. Iovar is just so much better than than frickin' Aracha. Just about as good as a Lord bonus. For certain things, definitely better. And then he just actually puts up damage. You know, he's right there with Vixera and Silas. I'll say Silas is having a much better run this time around. But here's a key thing. Vorn is kind of whacking Hex around. I had done runs before where Vorn was beating Hex, so a surprised Hex beat Vorn last time. And I think that does speak to, oh, that was really annoying. Dao Chan just triggered, so that's going to throw off our results ever so slightly. That was the only time, though, I was looking. So one weird Dao Chan trigger at the end. But yeah, Vorn was usually beating Hex with Nastya. So Hex might have just had really good RNG last time. Our biggest blood damage by a lot. Here are the numbers. That last little Diao switch couldn't have thrown us off by more than like maybe 1 million, 2 million on each unit. So we got a pretty clear picture. So even counting shield damage, Vorn pulls ahead of Hex. Iovar is ahead of Vixera and Silas. You can see Silas performed much better with Iovar. I think probably there had to be some interesting moments of RNG or what damage was going into the shield. But there you go. That is the final test. And I do think it's very conclusive. Numera just does about 35% more damage than Hex, at least at A0. Imagine what happens if and when they introduce an exclusive artifact for her. And yeah, Vixera is amazing. I mean, Vixera is putting up the damage that Iovar is. Granted, like with her mommy as the Lord, but that is really remarkable how good the DPS in her kit is for this kind of stuff. Let me put everything in the sheet. Give me 1 sec. All right, folks, here is our final sheet. Let me actually remove myself from the film for a second in case you want to pause it so you have this as a reference. Let me pop myself back in here. And you can see, I think we probably were thrown off just a little bit by that Dao Chan switch at the end, but overall, I think we were having better RNG. And certainly, I just think Iovar is the better Lord. I think that comes through really clearly with Silas. I mean, this is an RNG. 9 million more damage. Yes, some could have gone into the shield, but I really think if it wasn't for that Dao switch, every one of the, or really him and Hex. Hex also would have been closer to that other number, though Hex clearly had really good RNG this time, but I'd suspect Hex would be at like 122. So basically right there with Vorn, it's very comparable. Numera is just clearly the best. Vixera clearly does crazy damage for an epic if she can be paired with Nastya. Otherwise, she just does very, very good damage. And Iovar is worlds better than Aracha. What is the big overarching conclusion, guys? Overarching conclusion, however you say that. Vixera is unbelievable, right? She's right there with Elysia. It depends on the content for like the best epic Lord in the game. This is supremely powerful stuff. We should all be very excited we get her for free. Is she a consolation prize for those who can't get Nastya? Without a doubt. However, do I envision there could be content where you run her under Nastya, even if you have Nastya? Yes. And should you still be A-okay using her if you're going for any of the poisoners, which you absolutely should. Yes, I mean it's amazing. You would need a completely full roster to beat those kind of numbers to where you wouldn't want to run this comp for certain content. Like I think even if you run Vixera instead of Nastya, I would imagine that's super meta for any team for Arbiter of Frost. But clearly for anyone that doesn't have all the amazing legendary lords in a full roster, this is going to be a top tier comp. There's very few things that will beat it. And once you get Nastya, it's going to be nasty. But Vixera is coming home for all of us 100% for free. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, this video was a monster to create, so if you do appreciate it, please do subscribe. And if you have any thoughts, critiques, comments, criticisms, blah, 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 let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Share with your mother, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.